William James had a gift for locating the source of confusion. Most philosophical arguments, he noticed, had a peculiar quality. They generated enormous heat without producing any obvious light. Disputants on opposing sides would argue passionately for positions that were formulated at a level of abstraction so high that neither side could say precisely what practical difference the dispute made to anything anyone actually cared about. James found this deeply unsatisfying, not because precision was unimportant, but because he suspected that much philosophical disagreement dissolved entirely when you asked the right question. The right question was, what practical difference would it make if this were true rather than false? James called this question the pragmatic method, and he applied it systematically to the philosophical problems of his era with results that were sometimes illuminating and occasionally devastating. He borrowed the basic idea from his friend Charles Sanders Peirce, who had argued that the meaning of any concept was exhausted by its conceivable practical effects. James extended this into a general philosophical method and, eventually, a theory of truth. He illustrated the method with a famous example. Suppose you and a friend are arguing about whether a squirrel, clinging to one side of a tree, is going around you as you circle the tree trying to keep the squirrel in view, while the squirrel rotates to keep the tree between you. You argue that you are going around the squirrel. Your friend argues that you are not. The dispute seems intractable. James's response: ask what practical difference it makes. If by going around you mean moving in a circle with the squirrel inside it, yes, you are going around it. If you mean first facing its front, then its side, then its back, no, you never get behind it. The dispute dissolves once you specify what you mean by the key term. There is no further fact to discover. There is only a choice of how to use a word. This example might seem trivial. James used it precisely because it was trivial to show that the method worked on easy cases and could then be applied to hard ones. Try it on the problem of free will. What practical difference does it make to believe in free will rather than determinism? If it makes no practical difference whatsoever if the person who believes in free will and the person who believes in determinism behave in exactly the same ways under all circumstances, then the dispute is meaningless in James's terms. If it makes a practical difference if the belief in free will enables a kind of sustained effort and moral commitment that the belief in determinism undermines, then the question of truth becomes the question of which belief produces better practical outcomes in the domains that matter. James was careful to distinguish this from mere pragmatic license from saying that we can believe whatever is convenient. He insisted that beliefs have consequences, and that the consequences of false beliefs tend eventually to produce trouble. The cash value of an idea is not simply what feels good. It is what actually works when you put it into contact with the full range of experience over time. A belief can seem useful in the short run and prove disastrous in the long run. Pragmatism does not endorse wishful thinking. It demands a harder test than wishful thinking can pass. The method is most powerful when applied to questions that have generated endless philosophical controversy without resolution. Take the question of whether matter or mind is more fundamental. James asked, what does it matter? If you are a thoroughgoing materialist, you believe that consciousness is entirely produced by brain processes and that there is no residue of mental life that is not accounted for by physical description. If you are a thoroughgoing idealist, you believe that the material world is ultimately mental in character. James wanted to know, in practice, what difference does this make to how you live, act, or investigate? He was not sure it made very much difference in practice, which made him suspicious that the dispute was more verbal than real. This does not mean James thought philosophy was pointless. He thought it was deeply important, which was precisely why he objected to philosophical disputes that produced nothing but more dispute. The pragmatic method was designed to separate the questions that genuinely mattered from the questions that only appeared to matter because they were formulated in impressive-sounding language. It was a tool for philosophical triage, for identifying which problems were worth the effort of serious investigation and which were pseudo-problems that could be dissolved by careful attention to what the key terms actually meant. Applied to everyday life, the method has considerable power. When you find yourself paralyzed by an abstract question about your identity, your values, your direction, James's method suggests a simple first step. Ask what practical difference the different possible answers would make. Not as a way of avoiding the question, but as a way of understanding what is actually at stake. Often the answer reveals that the genuine question is more tractable than the abstract one. Often it reveals that you already know what you need to do, and the philosophical confusion is a form of avoidance rather than genuine uncertainty. James called a belief's practical effects its cash value, the actual currency of consequence that an idea could be exchanged for in the marketplace of lived experience. An idea with no cash value was not necessarily false, but it was not genuinely meaningful either. An idea with high cash value, one that, when acted upon, produced real and significant changes in how things went, deserves serious attention regardless of how it measured against abstract philosophical criteria. It was a democratic and thoroughly American philosophy, suspicious of inherited authority, demanding that every idea justify itself by its fruits, and insisting that ordinary experience was the court before which philosophical claims ultimately had to answer. Subscribe to The Psychology of William James to explore more of his timeless ideas.